What you are listening to is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in the squared circle. Both parties have agreed to dismiss their cases and have their disputes settled here in our forum, the Turnbuckle Debate.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Turnbuckle Debate. My name is Sneed.
I'm Chad.
And our guest joining us today from the No Sold podcast, we have John joining us. John, what's going on, man?
How are you guys?
Good, man. It's really nice to have you here. We're pumped. We're running a short crew. We have a sick crew member, so we're going to go 3 deep on this one. And
yeah, where you at, Tom?
Yeah.
Where you at, Tom? You missed.
Suck it up, buddy.
John, No Sold, a wrestling podcast. I follow you guys on social media. I love the content you put out just on your social media account. You guys do YouTube streams. Tell us a little bit about No Sold.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for having me on, first of all, both you guys. So No Sold, similar to you guys, it's just a group of friends, childhood friends who wrestling bonds us. So we get into debates, we rate shows, we do a lot of old school content. We try to kind of keep diving back into the old school, keeps us connected, because some of the new school stuff, sometimes it isolates us, you know. So but yeah, every week we drop a weekly wrap up, and then we'll do a topic as well. And the topics usually trend towards the older, like old school stuff.
Awesome. Now, when you guys are doing weekly wrap up, are you wrapping up just the weekend wrestling current day?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll do
awesome.
the previous week of wrestling. We'll cover all the, premium live events, pay-per-views, if there are any, Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite.
That's awesome, man.
That's awesome. I love, we were talking off the air about, the age and everything. And, sometimes it can be a lot of fun for somebody our age to get in and watch some new product.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And have some conversation about it.
Yeah, I mentioned to you guys off air, so I'm around the same age as you. We have a 5-year age gap between, so there's 3 of us, and there's 5 years that separate us each way down. So, those 5 years make a difference, though, believe it or not.
Big time.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at you, Anthony.
yeah.
Well, man, we're pumped to have you here. We have 3 new topics to debate. We'll go about 10, 15 minutes on each one. And if you guys are ready, jump into it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. First topic of the evening. If Nick Aldis's falling out with Billy Corgan and the NWA is true, where should the national treasure land? WWE or AEW?
Okay, I'll kick this off. There's still people out there wondering if this is a work or not. Like if this is if Billy Corgan's trying to garner some interest, they have a pay-per-view, Hard Times coming up. Are they just trying to get eyes on the product? NWA has struggled since the pandemic to kind of get back on their feet. Me and Sneed have said pre-pandemic NWA, when they had Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks, Zicky Dice, all of these guys, they were firing, man. They had a really good weekly product. And I think they've kind of struggled a little bit since then. I wonder if this isn't them trying to garner attention, but it seems like if they are working us, there's a lot of people working. Matt Cardona has commented on it, said there's real heat. Corgan's been doing a lot of interviews. Obviously, he's pushing the agenda. Nick Aldis has been pretty scathing. And if this doesn't work, it's almost detrimental to the product because Nick Aldis is burying the NWA in a lot of these interviews. If he is to sign, I think it's going to be AEW. I don't know why. I think he's more fit for probably WWE, and I think he's a body guy. Obviously, he's got his supplement line that he pushes, and he seems like a Triple H type of guy. But there's been murmurings of Tony having an ace up his sleeve, a big name coming. So I wonder if AEW is going to bring in Nick Aldis. So I think he signs with AEW.
Interesting. So can I jump in here? Or
yeah, man.
Jump on. Yeah, you're good.
Awesome. Yeah, I just didn't want to step over you.
Absolutely.
I'm with you. So I listened to Billy Corgan the other day on Busted Open. I don't know if you guys heard that interview.
Yeah,
So he went pretty long. It was like a good 25 minutes. And he's really selling this. Let's just say that. Whether I get the feeling, all these years watching wrestling, everything's a work until I get the final proof, right?
Yeah.
And I remember at one point, Bubba Ray asked him if he's shooting or working. And Billy Corgan, using all his inside wrestling lingo, he loves to drop all the inside lingo. And now that he's in the business, but he's like, no, this is a total shoot, brother. I just don't feel like, it is. But let's just say for the heck of it that it's all real. It's all true. It's all a shoot. The question is, where should Nick Aldis land? I think I'm with you, Chad. I think he'll probably land in AEW because they seem to be just sort of scooping up whoever becomes available, whatever big name becomes available. Triple H is more bringing people back that were, released from his company or the NXT. Aldis is a fresh free agent. I know it will be a splash, but I'm of the mindset that he's one of these guys that believes his own hype and is bought into his own ego to the point where he's overrating himself. And maybe some fans overrate him as well. I'm not one of them. I think he's like average. You mentioned he's a body guy. He can certainly talk, but he carries himself. And the prestige of the NWA helped rub off on him, but he carries himself like he's, God's gift. And I know that's part of the gimmick, I guess, but what do you guys think, really quick, if I throw it back? Like, do you think he's as good as advertised and as good as he says he is?
I think he's good on the mic, good to great on the mic, actually. I think the persona he exudes, I buy in. Like on Power, when he would do those podium promos with the belt, Sweet Charlotte kind of cradled in his arm. I'm not big on his in-ring, but as far as like being that suit and tie champion and cutting really good off the top of the dome promos, I think he's really good there. So I'm kind of hit and miss with Nick Aldis. I do think he thinks he's the man, but it's pro wrestling. If you don't think you're the man, he's one of those guys. It's like you hear that old phrase, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. He is portraying himself to be one of the top names in the business. So hats off to him for getting people to buy into that. I think he's a great promo, but he's never really done anything bell to bell for me.
Yeah, I'm of the same. I feel the same. And we've had him on the show before. We interviewed Nick, and he definitely does believe his hype.
Oh, yeah.
This guy is all about some Nick Aldis. And he was great to talk to. It was a great interview. As far as where he goes, if this isn't, we've all prefaced, but if this isn't a work and it is all a shoot, I think he is way more fit for WWE, and I would like to see him in WWE. I kind of don't want to see him in AEW, but I feel like that's probably where he's going to go. I just don't feel like he's going to make the impact in WWE that he thinks, or in WWE that he thinks he will.
And I'm with you. I said AEW because I think that's where he's going to go. I would rather see him go to WWE.
Yeah. For me, anytime WWE can add someone, because I do think he has a lot to give, and I think their roster, for me anyway, is super thin. Like, I don't love WWE's roster, so they added in Cody. I love that. Bray Wyatt's back. Like, that's awesome. But they need more, for me in my own fandom. Like, they need more guys like Aldis to at least come in. Even though I said that he believes his own hype, you said it. He dresses for the job he wants, and they need a guy up there that can go toe to toe on the mic with someone, sell these programs. You know what I mean? And once you get it in the ring, that's another story. You mentioned his in-ring work. A lot of people aren't enamored with Karrion Kross's in-ring work, even Roman Reigns' in-ring work. A lot of people say once the bell rings, they're out. So I don't know if they can afford to have another one of those guys at the top, but it's tough. I think Tony Khan likes to make splash signings.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this could be one of those if this is a shoot. Now, does he show up at the pay-per-view? And this all turns into, one of these big angles. I mean, Billy Corgan mentioned he doesn't want to pull a Russo, or, that's the way he termed it. Like, he doesn't want to just swerve for the heck of swerving. But you never know in wrestling, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm always out. I'm like you, man. And I always kind of, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking work until I get a complete validation that it's not.
Now, if he doesn't show up at the pay-per-view, it's pretty much confirmed that it's a shoot, right?
At hard times.
At hard times.
I mean, unless they're playing the long game. Now, it's weird to me though, because they just bring in Bully. Bully's doing work. That's kind of a bigger name for them. You would think they would want to keep a guy like this and keep him happy. I mean, the dude carried the company on his back for a long time. He held that belt for a long time. And honestly, since he dropped it to Trevor Murdoch, it's been kind of, their champion right now is Tyrus. What are you doing? What are we doing here? God.
I was wondering if you were going to say that, because I'm out on Tyrus.
Tyrus is awful. It's not good. I mean, if you want to have him be just an attraction, he comes in, he's a mid-card attraction, fine, I can stomach that. But to hold the 10 pounds of gold, you got to be kidding me, Billy Corgan.
So is this where, if you guys had to guess what Aldis is referencing when he says the NWA product is so bad or so garbage now, what do you think he's referencing specifically? Do you think it's the Tyrus thing, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think he pretty much is just saying that straight up.
And
I think so, yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm wanting to say they brought in Raven as a backstage producer, he's working with Billy Corgan. And I've heard for years, Raven has a great mind for the business. We've also heard rumors that Nick Aldis is very particular about who gets pushed, who doesn't. He's all over his own booking. And that just seems like I haven't read anything to suggest this, but just my own mind, I'm like, is he clashing with the new minds that are brought in? Because when it was just him and Billy Corgan kind of doing their thing, it seemed like everything was fine. But now, or maybe he's just wanting to push, and he knows he's in the prime. He wants to get a big payday, and he's going for the big payday.
What do you guys think about the timing of this, though? Because his contract's up in January.
Right.
So for him to do this now, it just seems like such odd timing to push this now.
Yeah.
Billy mentioned perhaps that he's trying to get out early, and he's being very unprofessional in order to get out of the contract early. The guy's a smart guy, Nick Aldis, right? I think he's going into business for himself, to use an inside term. He's trying to keep his stock up. He wants to keep his name fresh. Because they mentioned suspension so publicly, which isn't always the case in wrestling, and you have guys commenting on it. Keep going back to the work thing. Sorry, but it's just...
No, man, no. I think you're onto something, and I wonder if they're doing this. There's a lot of that in, like you said, they don't mention suspensions a lot, but there's a lot of that in wrestling right now in the real news, with the Bucks and, with Sammy and Andrade's backstage fight. There's all of this shit and kind of bubbling up like that. So that kind of stuff does make me think that there's going to be a booker out there that sees that and wants to turn that into on-screen story. I'm surprised no one hasn't yet.
If it were Triple H, let's just assume Triple H, saw Aldis as an opportunity to bring him in. Do you think he's the kind of guy Triple H would, because he loves, like I mentioned, Karrion Kross. I think he'll get along with Cody pretty well, all the AEW stuff aside. He seems like a Triple H guy. Do you feel like Aldis would shine there under, because you said he's a WWE guy, which used to be a Vince thing, but is he a Triple H guy?
I don't know.
I think it's hard to tell.
I mean,
right now.
You see Triple H like he loves Sheamus. that hard hitting big guy. I'm not a Sheamus guy.
But he loves Johnny Gargano, who's the total opposite.
Right. He is good at seeing the value, and I don't think he has a type per se. The one thing I wonder with Aldis, and this kind of goes for both companies, if he is hard to work with, and there is that backstage stuff with the boys that you hear about, I think that could really hurt him going to AEW. I think they want to keep, especially right now, they want to keep that type of mentality out of the locker room. And I wonder if Triple H kind of likes that, because he was one of those guys early on. They stepped on people to get to the top. So would he respect that, or would he try to keep it out as well?
Fresh off of that Punk thing, they're probably thinking in AEW, let's steer clear from all problematic, pro wrestlers. Yeah. We only know what we hear. And last thing on this Billy Corgan interview from Busted Open, because it was informative, for what it was worth. But he kept mentioning how Aldis is taking away from the pay-per-view itself, and he's taking away from the talent. Then he brought up Mickie James, which is a weird, wild card in this thing, because obviously she's friends with Billy Corgan. She's obviously with Nick Aldis. So by mentioning her, and then it kept feeling like he was almost burying his pay-per-view, because he went on there to promote it and then talked about Aldis for 30 minutes. So it's like, if this doesn't pay off at the pay-per-view, then he's not as good of a businessman as he thinks he is.
Right. Yeah, it has to. You gotta string us along. I mean, you got WWE kind of thinking outside the box with the White Rabbit stuff. Is this their version of trying to get people tapped into that pay-per-view? I mean, it's possible. The Mickie James thing does make it interesting, because there's all that heat with how they handled Empower. You had Tony Khan even chiming in and being like, hey, I paid most of the women on that roster that night. So there's a lot of pointing fingers going on right now.
Yeah, and I felt like Billy Corgan, he said at the end, actually, that stuff like this makes him sort of want to get out of the business. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but they framed the question does stuff like this turn you off to this, business? And he said, yeah. He's like, I'm going to do a concert, and then I have to deal with this kind of stuff. It's like, sometimes I don't even feel like it's worth it. And if you start to lose your passion, good luck.
Bad.
Yeah, that's bad, because it's a tough business with all the personalities. If that's what gets you, you might want to just go to the Smashing Pumpkins.
Right. It's true.
Does anybody have anything final to say on this? We'll move on to our next topic.
No, I'm good.
I'll just say in closing, so NWA is not my forte, if you will, this current incarnation. I love the aesthetics of it. I really do. And I love the tradition they brought in. And I'll dip in when I can. It's not must see for me.
Yep.
I think some of the guys they have just don't fit in, Tyrus being one of them, with that aesthetic. So if it's Billy Corgan that prefers these certain wrestlers, that Homicide, some of these guys, I just don't understand, mixing them in with that tradition. But I just wanted to say, I like what they're doing, but I think, all wrestling, could be much better,
I'm with you. I was in on it in the beginning, and it's the talent that they've kind of picked and choose here lately. I've just been kind of out on.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, it was must see for me at that time. And then I don't know what magic they lost, but when it came back, it was not there.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So we will move on to our next topic of the evening. All right. Now, John, this is the topic that you brought to the table. Is MJF more valuable as a babyface or a heel? So I'll defer to you to go first on this one.
Well, it's a hot topic, I guess, right? Because there's a little bit of flip-flopping lately, depending on the week you're watching Dynamite. I'm an every week watcher, especially over the last year. And sometimes we get these scathing, personal, infuriating promos from MJF. The stuff with Regal was super deep, layered. And then we get the pandering MJF that comes out and tries to drop the catchphrases and is imitating Jon Moxley. And it almost feels like it's so over the top that I don't think it's babyface, but he's almost pandering, like I said. I framed this question to you guys because valuable, meaning, making money, right? Like drawing money.
Right.
Where do you babyface MJF? Maybe he's going to sell a lot of merch. Maybe he will sell tickets. But I thought the whole thing with MJF is people pay to see him get whooped, right? Pay to see him get his just desserts. So I won't answer what I think yet, but I figure I'll throw it to both of you and just get your opinion.
I think it seems like it's coming quick. Like I wanted more heel, and I feel like he hadn't tapped the heel persona, and I love him as a heel. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should hate him. Maybe that's the job of a heel. But I feel like it's all in the crowd, and the crowd is demanding that he turns babyface. And I feel like they're kind of going with the crowd. I mean, that last week he was on TV, they kept cutting to the crowd and people were just chanting along with him. And there was a little bit of pandering, but I think he's going to be, I think done correctly, I think he could be a transcendent babyface for this company. Like, I think he could be someone who truly brings in new viewers. I'm not saying he's going to be The Rock, but if you remember when The Rock was a bad guy and then he turned babyface, not a lot changed. It went from him cutting down the baby faces to him making fun of the heels, and the crowd was into it both ways. I feel like MJF could kind of follow that path, but as far as value, the real value is going to be 3-4 years from now, after a good 2-3 year babyface run, when he stabs everyone in the back and goes back to a heel. That's the money maker for me. Like, I can't believe, like, make us love him for a few years and then stab us in the heart. I think he follows the Ric Flair model. Ric Flair made his career being the dirtiest player in the game, but then he would go babyface and he somehow managed to sucker you in every time. And when he would pull out his bag of tricks in the heeldom, it always got you. So I think MJF, he will be valuable as a babyface, but I think the true value will be when he turns back heel years from now.
Yep, I feel the same way. I think, I don't know if we'll ever get true just babyface, though. I think he's going to be the tweener guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if he'll ever lean fully into the babyface. Like, even at like autograph signings and stuff, he's such a dick. And that's the draw to get, I saw over the weekend, he stole a little girl's popcorn bucket and ate the popcorn, threw the rest of it on the ground and wrote "blow me" on the bucket and gave it back to her. So, like, he's still playing that heel, but people love it. So I think the value is going to be in him being a tweener.
I think, not to cut you off, I wanted to say something on Chad real quick, because you mentioned you're not supposed to like him, right, as a heel, and that's sort of where that's why I framed this question. Is like you said, nothing might change, but he's done such dastardly stuff, like some low, like bottom of the barrel stuff. Because Rock was snarky and like would cut the the baby faces down. MJF has done things, calling women pigs. Like he's going super low. Now, you don't want your baby face being like that, right? Like,
right.
The face of your company, I should say. Like, you don't want him being like that, like, I guess, harsh. But I was just, because what is a real heel anyway, right? At this point, like,
right.
You're talking about, like, he might always just be a tweener. And I mentioned, where's the money? Money, booking wise, or money drawing money to the company? Like, those are two different questions, two different things as well, right?
Yeah.
Like the creative side and then the money side. I just think your babyface, your number one babyface, like, or your number one draw, calling himself the devil, even, like, it's like, it doesn't equate to me for like mainstream positive PR, and get into a lot of different layers with this MJF thing.
He's definitely not going to be a Cena. He's not going to be he's not that
Make-A-Wish guy.
but I do agree. Like if he does go babyface, I think he'll still be himself, but he won't be cutting those Brian Pillman, your father's dead type of promos anymore. I think it'll be more of the Rock's angle of just cutting people down, making fun of people, not so personal, not so venomous. I think that'll stay with his heel work.
It'll be more like when he was in, was it Virginia, and he came out and he was like, "I love you, Virginia, despite all your shortcomings." Or
yeah.
Little blows and little jabs,
small jabs. Yeah, you know, I'm still just not convinced that I don't know, man. Like, what's he always say? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing you he didn't exist.
Right. Yeah. You're still thinking this is all going to be a ruse, and he's going to stab Moxley in the back somehow.
Well, are you thinking that it's going to be a ruse and then the firm comes out and they all stand tall with him as the champ? Like they help him still, or would it be like a separate ruse?
I don't know, man. Like after that whole beatdown,
that would be ridiculous, right?
It would be pretty ridiculous if that beatdown was.
He took that beatdown to throw us off. He's done that before, okay. Tricking us as far as the dog collar lead up when he cut that promo about I was picked on in school and everyone like really bought in, and then he comes out and just destroys Punk,
But that's a whole other like logic in wrestling is not always easy to decipher. But if you're gonna say like I'm gonna have the firm come out and beat me up, I'm gonna look like I'm gonna try to help you, Mox, but then I'm gonna have the firm beat me up only at the pay-per-view for them to help me. That's ridiculous, because you guys remember when The Rock turned, remember he was almost a babyface, and then at Survivor Series, the Deadly Game, he turned back heel that night, went with Vince McMahon, but the corporation went with the corporation, but they never touched him. Like he rolled Boss Man up, like they never actually touched him.
And that's the way you should do it. Like I can't. To me, it's a bridge too far for me to buy in. Hey, have Morrissey power bomb me through a table, and I'm going to take this. If that's bad booking, if that's what they do.
But I don't think it's going to be the firm that helps him, though.
Ah, okay.
I'm more thinking it's Regal that helps him.
Oh,
we have one of our listeners that is really driving this theory home as well. So the thing about it is, where does that leave? It's the Blackpool Combat Club, Blackpool, England, Regal.
See, I don't think Blackpool. I don't think they're sticking around that long, though.
I don't think they're. Yeah, I don't think they're in it for the long haul either. I think we're already seeing a little bit of dissension in there. I think Danielson needs to. He's yet to be booked in like a big, interesting long-term story in AEW. I'm waiting for them to pull the trigger on that.
Right. No, he had the matches with Hangman, the hour-long Broadways and things like that. Omega, right? He worked Omega early.
Yeah, the first that was Arthur Ashe, the first Arthur Ashe show.
But no story. I
no
know what you're
story.
Saying. Like, nothing you sink your teeth into. I'm a fan of that though. The Blackpool Combat Club, like as far as
I
do
too.
Represent like this idea of. We were just talking on our show, like we want to see their dojo, Cobra Kai style. We want to see them in there training guys, and I hope it sticks around because I think it could keep bringing guys up.
I think the benefit of that entire angle has been Wheeler Yuta. I mean, none of those other guys needed it. I guess you could say Claudio needed it a little bit, just coming in, trying to break that Cesaro stigma coming into a new company. But Blackpool, for me, Wheeler Yuta has grown so much under these guys. He's just on the mic, everything. He's got an edge now. He had zero edge prior to that angle.
He's with the best friends, right? I mean,
right.
No, I'm with you. And really quick on your thing, Sneed, like with the Regal, if that were to happen, it's definitely understandable because he himself has had this side program with MJF lately, like almost off to the side on his own podcast. I heard him mentioning like MJF's not a real villain. He doesn't know the first thing about it. Maybe to your point, he could take him under his wing and be like, all right, sunshine, this is how it's done.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would love it. I probably would like a few weeks later, but it's definitely a possibility. Can't rule
it just with him saying that he doesn't need the Dynamite Diamond Ring, but then playing up the brass knuckles. Like,
Yeah,
I don't need the
man.
ring, but I will use the knuckles.
That's a great point.
That's the beauty of MJF to me right now.
Yeah.
He has built a reputation where you cannot trust his ass, but the crowd is getting behind him
because they want to.
So you're wondering, like, is because Jericho said he's going to be the biggest babyface in the business one day. Is Jericho in Tony Khan's ear telling him we need to pull the trigger on this? We need to pull the trigger on this, or there's so many variables to MJF. I think he's the most interesting guy in pro wrestling right now for me. The way he is must see. There's no one else that I enjoy watching more than MJF.
I would throw Cody in there when he's healthy. That's just me. I'm a Cody.
I'm a Cody guy. I like Cody.
Yeah.
Awesome. But we're talking about active right now. I'm with you. I mean, he's got to be right at the top. And it's funny you mentioned that about Jericho, maybe getting in Tony Khan's ear. I think it's also funny, like the commentary. It's sort of a commentary on the audience. Remember in like the Attitude Era, how the fans demanded Austin turn babyface, and it was like, he's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
This crowd nowadays in 2022, like they want this guy who's, the bottom of the barrel. They cheer him anyway. It's interesting, right? Wrestling fans.
Crazy.
We're crazy.
It's so like, it's such an indictment on the times, like Attitude Era was the era of Woodstock 99 and that type of, it was a very, a moment in time that will never be the same again. And I feel like we're seeing a little bit of how the crowd is different today in the way they're handling this MJF.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting. And I'm with you. Must see. We'll see it tonight.
Yeah.
This is what I love about what's going on right now. Everybody has an opinion on what's going to happen. Yeah. And I think that's what makes the best wrestling.
That is the best wrestling. When you don't know what's going to happen.
When you have no idea, and somebody says something, it's like, oh man, that could happen. And then somebody else says their pitch, and it's like, well, that would be cool if that happened.
There's a lot of theories on the table that could work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Are you guys ready to move on to our final topic?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go. Final topic of the evening. Will Jeff Jarrett be a net positive for AEW in the long run? As we saw Jeff Jarrett last week week before last.
Yeah, when this drops.
2 weeks ago, show up on AEW. He came in, like a thief in the night and smacked the guitar and gave a speech.
Yeah. You want to take it, Sneed, or?
I think he will be a net positive for the company in the long run as a whole. I think it's going to be a net positive because of what he brings to the table and what he'll do backstage. On air, I mean, Jarrett's Jarrett. You know what you're going to get with him. I think it's a lot of fun. I get NWO vibes from the what he did the first time he showed up. But having a mind like that backstage, somebody that's been in the business and has a family that's been in the business, there was a lot of truth into what he said about his family being in the business for 70 years.
Yeah. Since the 40s.
So, I think in the long run, what he brings backstage will be a net positive for the company as a whole.
I'm kind of in ring. I don't care. It was cool seeing him. It was cool seeing a guy, because I loved his stuff in Game Changer Wrestling that he was doing with Effie. The Last Outlaw stuff in GCW was a lot of fun. He kind of brought that character in. He goes after one of the pillars, the young pillars, the homegrown Darby Allin. I thought that was cool. I'm not real big on him aligning himself with the Lethal, Jay Lethal crew. I love Jay Lethal. I'm not big on Satnam. I'm not big on
not
anyone else attached to that. But dude, people underrate Jeff Jarrett's wrestling business acumen. He will be, if all reports say it's a long-term deal. I'm not looking at his in-ring stuff. I'm looking at him purely as, I forget what the exact title of his job is, but it's essentially
Director of Business Development.
Something like that. It's essentially, he is going to be opening up more towns, because we know that AEW has been running kind of the same towns and their attendance has been dropping a little bit because they're wearing out the territories. The places they go, they're going there a lot. So I think him and a couple other guys, Raphael Morphy and those dudes they're there to get into new venues, new cities. Jeff Jarrett started TNA. I mean, people can say what you want, the falling out of that with Dixie Carter and all of that. He has been around the business. There's a reason Vince McMahon and those guys would bring him in a backstage capacity for WWE. I think it's weird because in WWE, he had too much of a leash on him, I feel like, to really show what he can do. And in AEW, I think they're going to give him a little more freedom to help the business because they need that. They're trying to build that team, that backstage team, to further grow this company. But at the same time, I think Jeff Jarrett can't just be let off the leash because he is a promoter himself. He's from a promoter family. So you got to worry about ego a little bit with him. But I think if he's bought into AEW, Tony Khan, I know he's with Conrad Thompson, and JR and Tony Schiavone work with Conrad Thompson. If he gets behind this kind of rebel rogue promotion to help them kind of grow into the next phase of their business model, I think he could really, really help them long-term behind the scenes. In the ring, maybe give us some fun Jim Cornette-esque character shit to enjoy in the ring, but I'm more thinking behind the scenes with Jeff Jarrett.
Interesting. So I have a couple problems with Jeff Jarrett being here in AEW. So just to answer the question first, net positive, or I think it'll be a wash. I don't think it'll be a loss. I don't think he'll gain anything for them monetarily. I love Jeff Jarrett, like the man. I listen to his podcast. Seems like a swell guy. I think he's, great guy and all that. But there's a couple problems, like I mentioned. So TNA, you mentioned, he started TNA. They had a long run under him. The thing was, I remember in interviews, even now he'll talk about, he always aimed to be number 2. He wanted to be the alternative, and he wanted to be set in that comfort zone. He said he never fooled himself into thinking he could be number 1. So if you bring a mediocre mentality into a company, I don't really know what you have to offer, in terms of like exceeding what AEW already has, because quite frankly, they've already exceeded TNA in terms of success this short brief of time. So just from the backstage stuff, that's the first issue I had. The second issue I had was he debuted. He did go after one of the pillars, and I think he cut the promo saying he looked cool. He looks great, by the way. Like the last Outlaw, he's in great shape. But the promo was along the lines of like destroying the company, or at least destroying the younger guys. And then Tony Khan comes on, Twitter, and he's like, "Welcome to the team. Happy to have you aboard. Can't wait to do business with you." And I know like kayfabe is
I hate
dead.
Yeah,
but if you're gonna do that, because they ask you to pay attention to the online stuff, like watch YouTube to get to know the New Japan guys,
right?
Watch our Twitter to get. So we're gonna pay attention to online, and then you're gonna break the cave. You're gonna kind of break character and say Jeff Jarrett, part of the team, can't wait to do business, but he's on screen saying, he's here to destroy it. That's a disconnect for me. So that was the second little, nitpick issue I had. But like I said, it's sort of probably going to be a wash. And the main thing I just can't get out of my head is the TNA stench. I don't know if you guys are basketball guys, but like Russell Westbrook.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Nobody wants to touch him, and I'm not saying Jarrett's Westbrook in any way, but like there's a certain stench he brings with TNA. And he's not only from TNA, he aligns himself with Jay Lethal, who's from part of TNA.
Right.
Sanjay was TNA. I'm sure Sting and him are going to have a face-off, and I'm going to get flashbacks to like Bound for Glory 27.
Yeah.
And then we got Taz calling on the commentary. It's like, I don't want any reminders of TNA when I'm watching AEW. And that just might be in my head. That might be something because my guys I do the show with, like, they don't harp on it as much. They're always like, you're being too hard on it. There's not a lot of TNA, but Jeff Hardy, I can go down on the list. You know what I mean? There's a lot of TNA leftovers, I guess. So I don't want it to turn into TNA, and that's my main fear. So
yeah, I think you're onto something a little bit with that too, because I think Jeff Jarrett has been trying to get that stench off of him since he left. I think it's one of those things he's never been able to. I think everyone's perception of him is that a lot of people's perception of him is that he booked himself into, he was the man in TNA. He was the Triple H there. Like he still has that reputation that I think has haunted him a little bit. I think his podcast you're starting to see the method behind the madness a little bit in his podcast. The only thing I would push back of him coming in with a second place mentality, I think Tony Khan doesn't want to be number one either. I think Tony Khan gave that interview where he read the book about he wants to be a challenger brand. He doesn't want to take over the top spot because he feels like it's not
possible.
It's not a feasible thing to do. So he referenced companies like Pepsi to Coca-Cola and Burger King to McDonald's. It's like they will never take the top of the mountain, but they're what in business, I guess in corporate business, they consider a challenger brand where they're going to be just as successful in their own way, just at maybe a smaller scale.
No, that's fair. I guess just to close it out on the whole TNA thing, and like you said, the stench, he has done a great job of like reinventing himself. You can only do so much, especially when you're his age. It's not like he can change gimmicks and go to the WWE and start all over again. So I respect what he's done, the GCW stuff. It's just, I would have preferred if they brought him in to keep it backstage, or if you're bringing him in to do this, like you said, it NWO vibes. It's weird you say that because I kind of did too, but not the right NWO. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the black and gray later.
Oh yeah.
So, but meaning they should maybe have just kept him off TV and did the backstage thing, and maybe quietly introduced him as a guy that's going to take a role backstage.
Oh, Tony Khan loves that splash, though, man.
I'm surprised the lights didn't go out.
I know.
The Cole Carter swerve was enough.
Yeah, he swerved everybody with Cole Carter.
The Cole Carter swerve was,
and the crowd went silent.
Exactly. Everyone's thinking like that's the surprise, and then boom, he comes out.
I say all this to say really quick, Sneed, and I'll let you finish. But I say all this to say I'll probably watch it. The next episode of Dynamite, Jarrett will come out, cut some cool promo because he's pretty awesome still on the mic, and then I'll just be like, all right, I'm in, so it could always change.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting ready to say is that, from Flair's last match, if you guys watched Flair's last match, the guy's really good at getting heat.
He's
really good at being a heat seeker.
He is a good heat seeker. The one thing, my last thing is just, I totally agree with you, dude, about there's a lot of TNA people here, and there's other people that say there's a lot of WWE rejects and
NXT
and even WCW. People say, "Oh, I give WCW vibes." I love that about this company. It's such the
WCW vibes or
everything.
Okay, because I love the WCW vibes.
Oh, I'm a WCW mark. Yeah, I love that. I love that. In one instance, I'm getting Shibata, Orange Cassidy, so I'm getting this New Japan vibe. And then Jarrett comes out, and I'm like, are we watching TNA? And then we got a Ring of Honor story. I just love the smorgasbord buffet vibe of, I think sometimes it gets out of hand, and it muddies shit up, and it fucks shit up, and it's a tightrope to walk that sometimes they fell miserably. But when I do love it's like they aren't afraid to mention histories of all these other companies. And it makes me like a longtime wrestling fan. I love those little nods to all these different companies. And I mark out for shit like that.
I'm with you. Tony Schiavone, like being a part of AEW, honestly, he's like one of the main reasons I think I got hooked. As crazy as that sounds.
Same.
I was like, I'm in, I love it. But I respect what you're saying. The buffet thing, I had to have that explained to me by like one of my guys on the show. He's like, bro, you take it too seriously. Like it's for everyone, because I get sometimes like it's too flippy floppy for me, blah, blah, blah. It's like your shit will come back around. Like what you like will be, you'll have MJF come out. You'll have a story, So I'm like, I got to just learn to live with it. This is how this thing is now.
Yeah.
Man, this has been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, this is a great great topics this week, man.
Had a lot of fun. Anybody have anything final to say before we wrap? Do you have a round robin?
No round robin.
Okay. Well, John, it's been a lot of fun having you on. Can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Appreciate you guys once again, by the way. Thank you so much. This was so fun. All 3 topics.
You got to come back, man. We got to have you back, and we got to have your dudes on the show come in and make some appearances too.
I mentioned, they'd be very excited to do so, and I would love to come back. But you can find us on, first of all, Instagram is kind of the best way to connect with us. It's at nosold_podcast. And you can always message us through there or comment or whatever. But to find us, you could stream on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And you could just search No Sold, a wrestling podcast. And also on YouTube, same thing. Search No Sold, a wrestling podcast. Where, like I said, every Wednesday and Friday we come out with shows. We got a weekly wrap, and then we do old school topics. We're always looking for some suggestions on topics, things like that. So we're going to be covering the OG Survivor Series. The original.
Oh, nice.
Rewatch that. So that'll be fun in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, thanks again to you both. Enjoy.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back. This was a ton of fun, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Here's Jeff Jarrett and then NWA.
Yeah. Double J. All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for this edition of the Turnbuckle Debate. Make sure you guys are following us at theturnbuckletavern.com. Man, it's kind of crazy with a 3-man. We usually have Tom here to throw to get his shit in, but I'll just go ahead and say give a like, listen, and follow to No Sold. You guys have a good one. We'll see you next week. Court is dismissed.